All right. Well, next on the mic, we got Miles. Miles over here is one of our Anvil founders. I've known him for a little over a year and a half, and I've seen kind of his work with like Relay, as well as like some of his dev shop work over the last year. And I was like, I really want to get Miles on the pod. He's really sick. So Miles, do a little intro.
What's up, Charles? What's up, Charles? I'm Miles Mafuka Martin, co-founder of Relay, co-founder of 3SB. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was a longtime Steeler fan, swaddled in a terrible towel at birth. Yeah, went to University of the South.
Yeah. All right. How did you fall into entrepreneurship? How'd you kind of were you like a scrappy backyard lemonade stand kind of guy? I don't know. Was your mom a investment banker? How'd you get in the space?
I think, lots of reading in my house. Parents talked to us what was going on in the world. I was around entrepreneurship when I was young. Didn't realize that. Didn't have the language for that. But personally, my first business came in high school. I went to a boarding school, by the way. Went to a boarding school and I sold tall cans of Arizona teas. There was a convenience store in town. That was like a 15-minute walk away. The campus didn't want to walk the convenience store. I said, I'll do it. And then I sold it at a markup. Then I remembered grocery stores exist. I can buy in bulk. And so I could skip the walk in the first place. Ultimately, I leveled that up, but that's where I started.
Nice. So in a lot of ways, you've always been doing micromobility.
Oh my God. Yeah. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Definitely didn't have that language though.
Yeah. How did you kind of stumble upon Relay? If I'm not mistaken, that was around the end of your college career, in your college tenure.
Yeah, definitely exposed a little bit more to entrepreneurship in college. Still studied politics in school. Yeah. Man, I ran a consulting firm in college, so that's another thing. You're like, what can a college student consult on? More or less, it was a glorified writing company. People would ask me to write a handful of different things, and I said yes. A bunch of conversations to follow, but came across Relay with an internship where I met my co-founder TJ. We had an internship in DC, and I worked for a much bigger, well-funded startup at the time. And it just got me thinking. I was like, I have to figure out how I cannot participate in the workforce traditionally. That was really the goal.
You're not good at having a boss?
I don't even think it's that. I was just like, there's bound to be something more. Or if there is, I want to figure out how.
You wanted a piece of the upside.
Yeah, there's something about the freedom of thought, the freedom of work. Yeah, so I worked at a well-funded startup as an intern in undergrad, and I was like, there's got to be a way for me to have a similar type of freedom.
Nice. That
I see, because I intern pretty directly with the CEO.
And so you were like, I want to do a startup-y thing. How did that become, I want to do this startup-y thing?
Yeah, so it's 2019, and I forget exactly how it happens, but I have the larger research question is, why do things move? Why are things where they are when we access them? Yeah, I didn't realize that was a supply chain and logistics rabbit hole. Yeah, but I jumped down the rabbit hole. No idea, but I wanted to answer that question, and more or less Relay came about by seeing a few points of the industries where we were like, that seems kind of weird.
Where are those points?
At large, almost all supply chains and logistic roadmaps look the same as they did 100 years ago. Humans are really good at getting a lot of stuff across a rate distance. Pretty insufficient and inefficient when getting very small amount of things across short distances. Very good at scale.
So at bulk.
By default, yes.
Yeah.
But it still would be easier for us to take like this mic and ship it like across the planet to Tokyo.
To like, I don't know, Altoona, PA or something.
Even closer.
Yeah.
Even closer. It literally would take more work to go a neighborhood over than it would to actually like ship this to Tokyo. I was like, that's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird. Why is it difficult to move the things that we have in front of us?
And so why, what's Relay, and why is that the solution to that core question?
Relay is a consequence of trying to answer that core question.
Yeah.
Just like any other business, tons of iterations. But Relay is a hyperlocal infrastructure for people to drop off and pick up things.
Yeah.
Hyperlocal, we can define it a number of ways, but we're really trying to be like, within my neighborhood or the next neighborhood, how do I get a thing from A to B? How do I access a thing from somebody else? So if it's how do I get a thing from A to B, or we're person A and B, and we need to exchange a thing to connect for whatever reason over a physical item.
Yeah. And so these exchange zones are pretty decent sized, like metal boxes, for lack of a better term, like pieces of hardware, where you can like use your phone to unlock and lock and put stuff in pretty asynchronously, whether that's you as a consumer, a business, peer-to-peer, a lot of different use cases. How'd you fall onto kind of this is the mode, right, that you were going to execute on and to solve this problem, right? You said it was an iterative process. Yeah, you probably wanted to start with software because everyone wants to start with software. How'd you get to hardware?
The conceptual base is I ran track and field in college.
Yeah.
So I ran a bunch of relays. I'm a 400 hurdler, so that just means coach feels like they can put me in any race. Yeah. But the idea of having a designated area where two different nodes can meet and connect is fundamental to track and field. But it's also fundamental to the rest of the supply chain. Yeah. But only at certain scales. So it's like in the first mile and the middle mile, we see all of these major nubs. These are your traditional warehouses. These are your staging grounds. Even some ports service this factor. We see it everywhere.
Yeah, at bulk.
I don't like the word bulk, but it's more importantly like further up the chains. Okay. Great distances when you're covering a lot amount of distances. I want to focus on the distance because people have like the supply chains and logistics industries have like justified the cost of distances with bulk. Okay. But the supply chains themselves were built for the distance. Anywho, like exchange zones, I ran track and field. I'm like, this is how we get faster and more consistent is with exchange zones. Yeah. We see it elsewhere in logistics roadmaps. What needs to change for these to be applicable on a hyper-local scale? And so ultimately, that's what Relay tries to address with our exchange zones. Is like, these are convenient strategic locations that can serve its immediate proximity.
And so it doesn't need to be, let's say, the cost investment of like a port.
Correct.
For example, which might have operations between countries at super long distances. Exchange zones, because they're so hyper local, only need to be tiny, small.
They can be small. As far as like the space they occupy, they're 6 square feet most of the time. Really small footprints. And when we talk about a network effect or critical mass, the critical mass is 1. Yeah. We put 1 down, that 1 exchange zone is valuable. Okay. Right? It doesn't need a network of 10, 100, or it becomes better the more they are. and you can get more creative. But if one community by itself finds it valuable, then the thing is valuable.
All right. So 5 years ago, yeah, you were like, this is a problem. I want to solve it. You come across TJ, who's your co-founder. Give me a little bit of that journey, right? Like where like the lows, the highs, how did you become the you of today? And that's a little broad question, but yeah.
Yeah. So TJ and I meet in 2019. I graduate spring of 2020. I decided to go full time on Relai in August of 2020. Mm-hmm. We try a bunch of things because we land on hardware eventually.
Yeah.
The original model was to serve local retailers. So people who sold physical goods that weren't food. We were in Richmond, Virginia. Mm-hmm. And that was version 1, which is on-demand delivery for local retailers. To make that efficient for us with a small team and no money, we set up locations. Like we would drop green cones, put a sticker somewhere, designate a spot, things that we could get away with without having to like pay for any physical infrastructure or like permission. And we would just meet. So if you were selling a jacket, and I lived over on here on this a chair.
Yeah. Whatever.
This chair is the exchange zone.
Yeah.
TJ would go from you to here. I would go from here to there. It'd be an open air space. We got some traction that way. But the feedback was consistent. We did this a few times to try to make the process better. Yeah. We changed the location, we changed the signage, we changed the hours, all of this stuff. But ultimately, after one iteration, all of the participants gave us the same feedback, and we're like, that's significant. Mm-hmm. Forget what they're talking about. It's the fact that they all said the same thing is why we need to pay attention. What was the thing? They all talked about security. Mm-hmm. The fact that it's open air is an issue for them.
Yeah.
They talked about timing. And no matter how much we communicated or texted or called,
there was always that.
Somebody was waiting on somebody. Yeah. And the fact that they were waiting meant that they couldn't continue their day. Mm-hmm. Because you can't leave. If I buy a new jacket, I can't just leave it in the middle of a parking space.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Security, timing, were the two biggest remarks. And we're like, how do we address that? How do we incorporate something that doesn't make people wait, that they can finish their part without having to directly coordinate with somebody else?
So that was the hardware. That's where the hardware came in.
We thought about hardware.
Yeah.
Now, this is what influences the hardware as well. Yeah. We didn't want to change our locations.
Because they were kind of optimized at this point.
They were optimized for the process themselves. Yeah. We like how we think about placing exchange zones.
Yeah.
We want the hardware to be a feature of the exchange zone. We pick a location because the location makes sense.
Yeah.
Give the hardware to serve the location. And so that's why we need things about it needs to be battery powered, it needs to be standalone, we need to all of these things that is not traditional for this type of hardware.
Versus having the inverse of the zone is served by whatever the hardware needs.
Exactly.
All right. But the problem at the time is neither of you are technical. You guys don't really know stuff about hardware. This is probably 3.5-4 years ago.
You don't need to code to show up at a parking spot, right?
Yeah, you don't need a code to
you got WhatsApp, right? Everybody has a cell phone. You can text, you can message.
But the moment you discovered that this was probably the solution that would make the most sense, how do you actually execute on that?
Well, we do. We have everybody's first response, which is let's go try to raise money so we can pay somebody else to learn it for us.
Yeah.
Okay. Like I said, we ran a few. We ran a few of these pilots before. They're all paid pilots, so we had some cash. And so we never raised successfully. We never raised institutional dollars, and so we take what dollars we do have and we go try to find a dev shop, a development agency to help build for us. We have bad experience after bad experience, and we can't quality control because we don't know how to code ourselves.
Yeah.
What we got good at is communicating what we want so that we know when something looks off, but that's still not all the way there.
Yeah.
So we learned how to code ourselves. Learned how to code ourselves. You're like all of these bad dev shops taking advantage, overcharging, under delivering. We're like, we could do that better ourselves.
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Reading first.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly it's like we go on YouTube and we teach ourselves and we make a couple examples.
Yeah.
The biggest practice TJ can speak for himself about what helped him the best, but what I did was I picked an app on my phone that I used the most, and I tried to rebuild it. And there are tons of how-to videos on YouTube. Like how to rebuild Uber with JavaScript only. You can take those courses, and so quick crash course.
So that app dev, you just crash coursed on that.
A lot of free tools. VS Code is free. You know.
And so what was the thing you wanted to develop internally? So this was just to, because that's not hardware, right? That's not like the hardware point.
That's still not hardware.
Yeah. This is like, I'm guessing like a software, probably like an app for Relai, the original Relai app.
Yeah, the first app we built was to automate the request from retailers that, hey, I have an urgent delivery, and to request the coordination between the people moving between exchange zones.
So software you guys were doing manually, trying to automate a part of that process.
Correct. That's what we started. Yeah. And similar to why we said like, we want hardware to fit our process. We were like, okay, we want to have the software first and then put hardware into that. Okay. We have had no success for over a year at this point. So like fast forward, it's like 2022 was a rough year. Yeah. No major prospects, just loss after loss. Nothing was closing. Really, it would have been a perfectly justified time to stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we needed a manufacturing partner. You build software for specific devices.
Yeah.
And then
so you build the software, and then you're like, wait a minute, what hardware even works here, right? Considering you need it to be flexible, you need to be able to plop it in a variety of different places, ideally modular, and it also needs to fit with your software stack. And so it's like, who exists that does that?
The answer was nobody. The answer was nobody. And as a result, we're like, all right, what's the closest thing? So we looked at people like, who's making the hardware that we wanted? So it's 2022. We originally find two people on the planet, like two companies on the planet. One's in India, and they had recently transitioned their entire manufacturing capacity to make PPE gear. You know, we're still in quarantine in parts of the world, so they have transitioned all of it. To make PPE gear, and then the other one,
no-go.
That's a no-go. They could, but they don't. The other one was in Central Europe, and their minimum order for hardware rounded up to $1 million.
And that's a no-go.
That's a no-go. That's a no-go. And so here we are, literally have like a few cents in my bank account. And I get an invite to one of my aunt's friends. Says, hey, there's a conference going on in Philly. They have a free center for startups to like table. Send them a request. If they accept you, no cost to attend the conference.
You were in 2022. You were like, yeah, we don't have a hardware partner. We're like, we don't have any money. We don't have any prospects. We might shut this down.
I went there with the full and purpose that this might be the last hurrah. So I'm going to show out and show up and have a great time. Maxed out a credit card. To buy the train ticket for me and my partner to go, because I was like, this might be the last time you ever get to see Relai as anything. A big old dinner so we can have that night. That was it. Then I met our hardware manufacturer our current hardware manufacturer at that conference. They were tabling. They were like, they saw our display. They said, who are you using for hardware? I was like, that's kind of the point of being here. They're like, yeah, we're building something that we want to be open air and a little bit more dynamic. We're not done yet. We're not even in beta for real. But you should keep up with us. And I said, no, I'll work on it. I'll do it. Right then and there. I don't care if you're in they're not even like really done with the alpha at that time. I said, that's enough for me. I just
I'll be the dev partner.
Don't charge me for it. That's all I ask. Don't want to charge.
Yeah.
I have no cash to offer.
Yeah.
They're like, cool. So now they get to justify a use case.
Yeah.
Subsidize
upside
R&D.
rev share possibility. Yeah.
And that's the kickoff at the end of 22. Now they ghost us for like 4 months. We were sending emails weekly.
Yeah.
Multiple times a week for 4 months until they finally hit us back at the start of 2023. They hit us back in January of 2023. So conference is in end of August of 2022. That's the conference. They don't hit us back until like right around MLK Day of 23. Mm-hmm. We put the first hardware at exchange zones in Richmond in June of 23. So really, like,
that's like 7 months before we met.
Yeah. Cook it. That's the quick timeline. Now, in that time, like TJ and I, we're like, yo, this is our best bet. We're gonna drop everything to make software that works for
those exchange zones.
For those exchange zones, we're gonna really double down. Shoot, we even get evicted.
Yeah,
from our place in Richmond at that time. Scurry off to Baltimore.
Yeah,
come back after we're done to launch in Richmond.
Nice. And then you had one in June of 2023. When is it? It's not 2025. How many exchange zones, like physical locations, do you have around? I don't know.
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Right now we have slightly under 40.
Yeah.
Across about 7 cities.
Yeah.
And this summer we'll mark 2 years in market.
Sick. And then at like pretty zero hardware costs to scale, which is pretty exciting. What was that first? I know you don't like pigeonholing yourself, but what was that first use case? What were some of like the most excited early adopters of the exchange zones?
It's not a pigeonhole. I'm just telling you what the data shows us is that there's not a majority. To start though, we had a couple of our physical retailers from the earlier pilots start to use it. That's just happenstance. Retention was difficult because it's been over 6 months, right? It's almost a full calendar year since we last engaged them with anything. But we set up we set up right outside of a pizza shop in downtown Richmond, and like adjacent to that is like a music store.
Yeah.
So you want to know the first?
Yeah.
The first is
this was the pizza shop and the music stores.
Those were the first, but it's just been such a variety.
But now you have give us some highlights then, right? Like it's a variety, but paint me a picture, right? So you have some local retail, right? Like very specifically, like maybe people are running clothing stores. I know you have like a like hair extensions and people that like have their own hair salons and that type of stuff. So like a lot of like local like SMB, like mainly small businesses, retail. Weed store?
No, because when we started, marijuana wasn't recreational.
Yeah.
So that's like just not a part of this, not a part of the blueprint.
Yeah.
It's agnostic because when we were running our pilots, we wanted to be able to do business with anybody who said yes.
Yeah.
And TJ and I went door to door, getting businesses to say yes to participate or to actually like host an exchange zone. That was the process. And as long as it fit, we were cool.
Yeah.
At that time, it was like anybody who's down to like meet at any of these random spots we set up.
Yeah.
But we wanted to carry that over. Mm-hmm. So now we're like, where's the hardware that can be agnostic?
Yeah.
That's why we have a bunch of different use cases.
Yeah. Including like a peer-to-peer marketplace.
Yeah, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Nextdoor, all those things.
Blah, like a lot of local retail.
Mm-hmm. Donations.
So like nonprofits, churches, not supply chain, like long distance supply chain, like I don't know, FedEx or anything like that. No, none of that yet.
Nope. Very intentional.
Yeah.
Very intentional.
Why?
The volume there is really high, and it comes to a point where it would dominate capacity immediately, and would require a much higher investment in hardware.
Okay.
Additionally, because a lot of sustainability comments to be made about our supply chains.
Yeah.
Topic for another time.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, they're one-directional processes. And that means that if you place a parcel inside a compartment, it has no urgency to be moved. That urgency is completely dependent on the end user.
Okay, so I had a package in the Amazon locker for like at least 2 weeks.
Why didn't you go get it?
Because it was just gonna sit there.
It was just gonna sit there.
Yeah.
There was nothing to incentivize you. You're like, I paid for the thing. I dare somebody to go move it. Which makes it's tough to justify those economics unless you get to a certain scale, a certain network effect.
Yeah.
We don't have the dollars to try to comply or accommodate traditional supply chains.
Yeah.
So we didn't.
Yeah.
And so we took a bottom-up approach. And now because we have a bottom-up approach and a user-initiated approach, every use justifies its existence.
And so the value prop for the Facebook marketplaces of the world, very salient, very clear. I can, I have this jacket and I sold it to someone else on Facebook Marketplace and I really want to chat with them, like security, like I don't really want to, I don't really want to see them.
You don't want to invite a stranger
to your house,
you
right?
Don't,
And so I don't really see them. And so having this third place to be able to do that exchange, value prop salient. What are some of the more interesting, because it's so broad, right? I want to give people a clear, I don't know, an idea of some of the gradients of that broadness, right? And so when you say, I don't know, I want a hair salon, why would I use an exchange zone?
When you do extensions or wigs with your hair salon, the hair needs to be prepared before it's installed. And that typically happens a day or two before the actual appointment to have the wig installed or the hair extensions added. What people are doing now is they're finding times to meet with their salon at the building if they have one, but especially post-quarantine, there are lots of stylists now that are running businesses from their home. Anywho, the idea of how are we supposed to connect so I can give you the thing to prepare for my upcoming appointment. Those are now question marks. And rather inconsistent because scheduling can be inconsistent.
Yeah.
That hair salon is different because people are spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on hair.
Yeah.
And so if I'm saying, hey, for a couple of bucks, you can drop it off, your stylist can pick it up.
Yeah.
And everybody's schedule is saved.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I'm spending hundreds of dollars on having this wig anyways.
Yeah.
So that's that stylist piece.
Yeah.
Donations, think about a nonprofit. So many nonprofits want to collect donations.
Yeah.
We're in winter right now, so let's say we want a hat drive.
Yeah.
So many organizations sacrifice their programming space or their office space to become temporary warehouses. Which is even worse because lots of donations aren't usable anyways.
Yeah.
So it's truly wasted space for a really good cause. But with exchange zones, they could leave the hat or the gloves or the heat warmers in the exchange zones and keep all that programming or office space available.
So it's a win. And so I personally have been a fan of Relay historically because of the versatility of all its use cases, right? There's a lot of, as I've been talking with Miles for last year, there's just like a ton of those like small micro, and I get his hesitancy to like label it one thing, even though he might not say it that way.
Dog, I just know my business, all right?
Yeah.
Like I believe we're in the infrastructure game.
Yeah.
All right, we're trying to create a hyperlocal infrastructure. What people use it for, we want to be mindful of.
Yeah. But it's because it's so broad. Like there's so many different use cases for it. And then the other side of this is the software development piece, right? Like it's not just one Relay app, right? That businesses and people exchanging on Facebook can go on. It's that, you also have this other side of your business that's like dev shop DNA. That's like, yeah, we're really good at developing apps. And so if you want to build your business, you want to build like a custom kind of interface for your exchange zone for your business, you can, right? Like how has that kind of played a part in this saga? Because I think that's the other half of the pie.
Yeah, starting the development agency, it came from the bit that like, I think we can do this better.
Yeah.
And a bit more sincerely. Ultimately, we said yes to any founder.
No.
We've kind of been skewing as the businesses clearly have a lot of synergy. But it's given us an engine for people to get creative with exchange zones, right? Like, I'm not really key to the super app mantra.
Yeah.
People already have tons of app on their phones. As annoying as people say it is to download, they still download. And utility is important, right? So it doesn't need to be all things to everybody. That's the difference here. Is I don't want, if everybody uses or likes a single thing, happy for it.
Yeah.
But until then, if you're like, hey, I need a Charles app to use to run my jacket, Facebook Marketplace store,
business,
yeah, cool. Let's get you to it. Let's get you using it.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want the barrier to entry to be like you don't feel like there's a tool for you.
Yeah. And so next level of that is, because you've been kind of doing this for a while, you've been doing this manually, this like app creation to like specific exchange zone setup process is the next level. All right, cool. Automating some of that, right? Like being like, all right, cool. Like on your end, is it like, ideally like in state, like I can just, 2 buttons, like I can get like an exchange zone to my spot and build my business around it.
Yeah, that's what we're working towards.
Yeah.
Is that the only barrier for you to have a Relay app or have an exchange zone is whether or not you decided to have one.
Yeah.
That's the goal. You have to, the only barrier is whether or not you thought and decided to have it.
Yeah.
That's what we're working towards.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Still a lot of work because there are a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
Still no institutional dollars either.
Yeah.
So that what's become a challenge has become like not having a large cash base to start the business has become pretty foundational to building it, because we have to be so intentional about how we sequence each new area we invest in.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, I think you guys are the best example of, there was that point in 2022 where that was the breaking. That was like that feels like that's like the inflection point of like Relay. Where you're like, no cash, barely technical, barely technical, no hardware partner. Most businesses, most people would have axed it out. And going from that to now, like 2 years later, one of the savviest technical people I know, runs their own dev shop, getting into like some of the nuances around hardware and manufacturing and kind of leveling up that part of your game as well. And locations across like 7 cities for this like hardware device. Lots and lots of different like use cases from like local businesses. Some really interesting businesses being created around exchange zones, which I think is like, that's like the next level of like, wow, like,
and those are coming along.
Yeah, exactly. Not just like, hey, like I have this existing hair business, I think this part of it can be leveled up, which in and of itself is like a couple $100 million business, right? Like just like for all get all the hair salons on it, blah blah blah, like all like these like some more micro businesses on it, just like leveling up parts of their game. But no, I'm gonna build my entire company around this concept. That's interesting because that means they're using your entire stack. It goes from, hey, like we're a mobility or a supply chain provider to we are Stripe. Just slightly different. Yeah.
I think a cool cultural moment to be like the proverbial "we made it" is when there are YouTube content creators talking about here's how you make your next business
with an exchange
zone, or like that would be a really cool moment. Or I read very, very critical articles in the media about is this just a Relay wrapper company?
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's fun because like I'll sometimes I'll see like student pitches or things like that around like supply chain and micro logistics, whether that be like maybe fashion exchanges, or for example, for like a really popular example of what people are like excited about building these days, sustainable and circular fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like, and now knowing Miles and like knowing kind of the infrastructure he's trying to build, I'm like, oh yeah, this just like the big problem here is that they just need exchange. So it's right, like they need the hardware component. For the exact reasons that Miles figured out after years of failing.
And there's a decision, because I think we can be honest that there are valid business opportunities no matter what we chose.
Yeah.
But the decision to say we did the hard work,
that's the bottleneck. That's the bottleneck.
That's the bottleneck.
Yeah.
The hard work is done. You now have a choice.
Yeah.
Our choice was, do we productize the hard work that we did so that everybody that we introduce a paywall for everybody else to use it? Or do we just raise the floor by saying, hey, we did the hard work so you don't have to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? We've seen businesses come from both.
Yeah.
It's just a choice. We chose, hey, we did the hard work, so now nobody else has to.
Yeah.
We know how to get locations. We have the hardware.
Yeah.
We're giving you the software.
Mm-hmm.
And we're giving you an opportunity to customize on top of those three things.
Yeah.
If you still want to do it yourself, bottom up, have at it.
Yeah.
We'll even tell you what you can anticipate to run into, because since we did it already. But it's a choice now. We didn't have that choice. We were looking at, okay, raise money or else.
And you guys weren't, I don't know, Stanford grads.
Nope.
You guys weren't Stanford dropouts in the Bay. Yeah.
Wasn't our network, no.
Wasn't your network.
And even to that point, even that was a little skewed.
Yeah.
Right? We graduated into quarantine.
Where your network matters even more because it's hard to get those like cold coffee chats.
Absolutely.
Et cetera.
Absolutely, man. It was a tough time to get up and try.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
what so then what is the next step for you, right? Like for Relay, what's the thing that takes it from, I don't know, like if like a number of exchange zones your goal, but like 40 to 100 exchange zones, if that's not like the bottom line, but 4,400, right?
Sure.
Like even going there, like what's like what's the next bottleneck, or is it like a sequence of like a bunch of 10% things?
It's the latter, but
Okay.
I can summarize.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, because we don't have any institutional pressures, we get to dictate urgency.
Yeah.
We're first in the market. There are no copycats at this point.
Yeah.
we get the pace we go at is ours.
Yeah.
And so we've invested heavily our time into organic growth metrics, right? So it's the fact that you will not see a paid ad about Relai.
No, all of it's word of mouth.
It's word of mouth. It's us being really intentional about customer retention and success programs.
You get to build slow.
We get to build slow. And being deliberate is where we get to get really good.
Yeah.
Because if you tell me, hey, something is wrong or I don't like it, I get to receive that as that is not a product question. That is not a market question. I need to care about this customer for what went wrong in their experience. Right? I get that type of clarity.
Yeah.
So what's next is when we do invest to pull the levers on exponential growth channels.
Yeah.
Right? When do we have the paid partnerships? When do we had the paid ads? Right? That's what's the difference.
Yeah. You get to take the time to build the rocket ship. So for any people with rocket fuel out there, this is.
I'll push back. Even on that. One thing we don't. What I don't like about the rocket ship no metaphor is perfect.
Yeah.
No metaphor is perfect. But the idea for building a rocket ship and using a rocket ship is that there's fuel to burn. There is a resource that you can aggregate, use with the express purpose to not use it later.
Yeah.
We don't have that bandwidth.
Yeah.
Okay? We're not building a rocket ship. If anything, we're building a stairwell to the moon or an elevator to the moon.
Yeah.
Because
no one's going to save you.
No one's going to save you. We built this business so far, and that's going to change once we start to flip certain levers, but the foundation is okay. There is no money and help's not coming.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah. It's exciting.
It's exciting now. I mean, 2022, it wasn't exciting,
My context is I get excited when I talk to Miles because I think his journey, again, that 2022 inflection point, and I see a lot of founders that are in that 2022 inflection point. And most, rightfully so, for their own journeys in their own life, might just hop off, might pivot, might just stop entirely, go to Deloitte. I think I always say Miles is a little bit insane because not many would have been able to pull that manufacturing deal out of nowhere, or just developed into being technical in less than 3 years, developing into being really competent technically in a reasonably short amount of time, just to make it work, just because they believed so much in the vision. My next question for you kind of is on that same vein, right? You gave a little bit of insight on, hey, here are some of the things I suggest founders do. What do you think about the vibe of a non-technical founder, right? Because that was you, and I know you have a lot of interesting opinions on it, but what's your take on that?
I'll focus on the non-technical part and then the founder part second.
Yeah.
Non-technical at large is a myth that people need to break. What I've experienced is I think it's a flavor of imposter syndrome. Being a non-technical founder does not inherently mean that you won't learn or can't learn. If you choose not to learn a certain skill set, that's cool.
Yeah.
I'm all for people choosing to do what they want to do. But the moment I choose to learn the technicality of a thing, no, I'm technical now.
Yeah.
All right. And even having that type of conversation with different stakeholders or potential advisors or investors to be you're not technical. I'm I get called that now.
Yeah.
I get called non-technical now. And I'm what do you mean?
Yeah.
Me and TJ were the ones who built who built the thing.
Yeah.
And we still get called that. So part of that is at this stage in the startup game,
Yeah.
part of that is a profiling
Yeah.
of like, here is what a non-technical founder looks like.
CS
Here-
major from reputable CS university.
Yeah, let's put him on the treadmill, or let's put him on the escalator to be a repeat CTO.
Yeah.
You know, but if you're a founder, if your focus is to do things,
Yeah.
at some point that has to coincide with learning things.
Yeah.
This is part of why older founders have an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
You live more life, you have a greater chance to know more things.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to spend time learning. That's an advantage.
Yeah.
But learning shouldn't be critiqued or scrutinized like that. Like, sure, I didn't know, but we know now. Now we can make new decisions.
So I'm a non-technical founder who kind of head in the water. Like, I feel like, I don't know, everything's coming at me. Maybe I'm looking for a technical co-founder. I don't know, like, you're trying to do so many different things, right? Like, and so, like, maybe, like, the idea of, like, specialization is a little bit more important here, and finding someone to complement your skill set's a little more important here, or, like, working with a dev shop is a little more important here. Everyone's journey is different, even if they become technical eventually.
But those don't have to be fixed, and that's what I want people to embrace.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and this is where founders tend to leave or pivot.
Yeah.
Is that they pivot the business to fit their specialization.
Not themselves to fit the business.
And you need to be self-aware to figure out which decision is right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's really appropriate to pivot the business based off your skill set.
If you don't know anyone in healthcare and you're trying to sell into enterprise healthcare.
You're trying to sell enterprise healthcare.
Yeah.
Right? You're trying to make a new pharmaceutical drug and you're not a medical doctor.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, there are very reasonable, even compliance-based decisions to make.
Yeah.
But
you're building a consumer app. And it's never been easier to develop a consumer app.
And there's so much things that goes into building software before you write a single line of code.
Yeah.
Not a single line of code. Do you?
Yeah. On that point, right? Like, any advice for people working with dev shops, right? I think your advice kind of is also good for people working with, like, a lot of these third-party service providers generally, but specifically dev shops.
Build the blueprint yourself.
Yeah.
What that blueprint needs to include is minimum a lo-fi design of every screen, of every interface, of every portion of your interface. That includes what you consider a core feature to the things we take for granted, like how do you plan to delete your account? You know, things we don't consider.
Yeah.
If you want to toggle between light mode and dark mode, make sure to design what that toggle looks like. So, at minimum, lo-fi designs that include all parts of your interface. The next thing is...
Yeah, I'm going to give a software you rec for that.
Figma has a free version.
Okay.
So Figma is one thing. It's becoming an industry standard.
Just YouTube how to finagle with Figma.
Right. And it's browser-based, so
Yeah.
it makes it a little bit more accessible as well. But if you have a .edu for an email, odds are your school probably has like an
Free
Adobe
Figma.
account.
Okay.
So you can use Adobe to do
Yeah.
the same thing. If neither of those, if those feel intimidating,
Nice. And how much is that going to save you?
like thousands of dollars.
$1,000 theoretically. Because
So-
you might have to go back and forth. Hey, that's not right. That's not right.
Yeah, you can tell them, build it like this.
Yeah.
This is where I want to start.
Yeah.
Lo-fi designs of the entire interface is first.
Yeah.
The second thing I would recommend is, like, at the minimum, list all of the data you want to manage. At a minimum. There's no technical expertise to figure out, like, hey, if you're making an events-based app
Yeah.
where, like, you want to create, like, the Eventbrite but just for startups or something.
Yeah, whatever.
Nobody is going to, like, you don't need to know how to code to think about, like, I want start time, I want end time, I
Location.
want date, I want list of members, RSVPs, links.
Yeah. All that basic stuff.
That's free.
Yeah.
Literally just time.
Mm-hmm. And you'll get charged at the wazoo for that same 5-minute.
Every project needs this to start.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you don't start with this, you're paying somebody to do that for you, which is cool as long as it's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's intentional. So those are 1 and 2 I would absolutely begin with. The 3 is a luxury if you feel confident about the product you want. User flows. Literally a map. I'm talking like squares and circles and arrows about somebody's going to go here, press here, see this, go to that.
Yeah.
If you map all your user journeys, with those 3 things, you can keep any developer accountable.
And it's also good, I guess, to your earlier point of you do enough of that, and then you're like, okay, this is exactly what I need to know to execute on that.
Thin line,
and
very thin line.
You know that. It doesn't mean you have to, right? Because there are there are other things to consider, right? Especially if you're dealing with something that it's a little more like the privacy and security components need to be a little bit tighter. And so you probably want someone else to look at it versus a rookie. But even just like knowing that, right? Knowing these are the things I need to know. Even if you're gonna slow learn, like you can get there. You can look at the nuances a little bit more.
That's how you save money.
Yeah.
As well, when you're like, at some level, whoever you work with has to learn your business. But if you have such a clear blueprint, the need for them to learn your business goes down.
Yeah.
Which makes whatever work they produce cheaper. Right? Like, if you're building a house, if you're building the building we're in, who's to say that all of the construction workers that built it knew the exact express purpose? And they didn't need to. The blueprint was so clear, it didn't matter.
Yeah. So you can be like, oh, yeah, this dev shop, they're cooking me. But you can just take that same exact blueprint, give it to someone else. Correct. Makes sense. And then I guess this is my last line of questioning. Why Pittsburgh? I know you're from here, but like your business is also very geographically based, right? And so there's a little bit of that geographic component. You moved back when you didn't have a single location here.
Yep.
Why Pittsburgh? And then subsequently, how has being here helped or hurt? Helped, hurt, not done nothing for you and your success?
I boomerang back for love, and me and my partner, we recently got our first house.
Locked him in.
Yeah, so I'm here for a minute, but my family has been here, or my dad's side has been in Pittsburgh for a long time. Grew up in the Hill, still have that house on the Hill. Watched Wiley Avenue get destroyed and replaced and all of that thing. So we, family wise, I do have roots in the city. And now having like my better half here, is why I came back. It's a primary reason why I stay. And the business was built asynchronously in mind. Yeah. And so for me to feel obligated to a physical place to try be antithetical to what I believe the business should be. There's still in-person elements and there are still synchronous elements, but anyway, the reason why I stay is like Pittsburgh can be a much better hub for innovation than it currently is. Pittsburgh excels in life sciences, it excels in robotics, and it excels with a certain type of funding path as well. But if I want to make this city better, if I want to contribute to what should be a long-term upside, I'm committed to doing it in a place that like wants me or not. Like I gotta be the proof that I want the place to be at some level. And then ultimately I'll have enough resources and influence to like change, to be a bit more hands-on. But I'm here right now and I'm completely invested to give it a good try.
If you could change one thing, what would it be?
Oh, one thing about Pittsburgh?
Yeah.
You want Pittsburgh at large?
Let's do innovation ecosystem.
Okay. Okay. I'm about to say the weather.
You're gonna go off.
Yeah. Let me. All right. About the innovation ecosystem. I want more working events.
Okay.
Um,
Like
like
a code and supply build night kind of energy.
yeah, something a bit more, something a bit more aligned with what hackathons should theoretically be.
Mm-hmm.
They become a lot of like posturing noise
Yeah.
over the last decade or so.
Yeah.
But the idea of I want to do a thing
Mm-hmm.
and I want a space where I can attempt to do a thing
Mm-hmm.
in the safest, most supportive, like room of expertise and feedback.
Mm.
You know, Startup Weekend is like Pittsburgh Startup Weekend is a great example.
More.
It's on its own though, right?
Yeah.
It's annual.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like I said earlier, code and supply build night. Colin over there does a really good job at I know, just bringing together a lot of like the software development community to do those types of things monthly, every other month basis. But like, I agree. I think more of that.
We have to like lean into the cross pollination though.
Yeah.
To be like code and supply build night. If I believe that imposter syndrome is real with non-technical founders, I can't host a code night in the title and expect people to show up.
Expect non-technical people to like go and even attempt a thing. And
I've seen like think about the level of barrier is if you know anybody who is a true Excel wizard, the transition, the learning curve to code is low.
Yeah.
All right, like it's really low if we're honest.
Yeah.
And so it's just being thoughtful about what type of language we use will prevent a very enthusiastic mind from participating.
Yeah.
Because we want enthusiasm. I think I want to cultivate more enthusiasm. Who wants to try? Who wants to attempt?
Yeah.
Who's willing to fail?
That'd be really interesting. We can talk about this offline, but I think that'd be a really interesting event, like a non-technical build night. Or I guess for people who consider themselves non-technical, just like be like, yeah, we're gonna come together, download Cursor.
We saw it in our Anvil program.
Yeah,
we have a founder who was like, okay, I'm gonna do it myself now,
doing my thing,
and now they're really into it.
Yeah, they are,
and they feel so much more
empowered.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I do think that's like. That feels like the upskilling. I think that feels differential. Again, not just on being able to build your own product, because when you're building for businesses, you're building for enterprises. I think there's a lot of security, privacy levels you need to hit, like system architecture. Like there's a lot of like levels you need to be able to hit that I don't think you can learn in like a month, 2 months, 3 months, even a year. But being able to know what you don't know. Being able to know what you need, what things you need advice and support on, being able to kind of suss out, all right, cool, this person's BSing me, this person's not. This person might be a good technical co-founder actually, because they actually know the core thing that I need for this, and being able to kind of even have a picture of that. I think that's the upskill. That feels differential even for non-technical founders.
And you as the ecosystem builder, you know that there are tons of people who can give very clear advice.
Yeah.
Right. I know what I'm good at.
Yeah.
I think I can recognize what I'm not, and either try to learn myself to make it up, or bring somebody in to help me learn, or bring somebody in to do it. It's like we see these companies, we see these startups that are 3 minutes old.
Yeah.
Talking about, here's my chief commercialization officer. I'm like, it's probably a little bit early. Right?
Yeah.
But who's going to be that mentor, the voice in the room to even drop that idea? How you grow might not be how you want to start.
Yeah. And yeah, on that, I guess we're about to wrap up. One last point on that. It's like, it's always a balance, right? Like between like, startups are this like weird animal where you kind of need your squad to be like exceptional at a couple of different things, and so it's unrealistic to not have some level of specialization for each given member. But there's a little bit of like this tension between that concept and like the relay kind of journey of like, whoa, like this initial hardship forced us to grow. This initial hardship forced us to grow and develop, and that became such a core fundamental part of like what allows you guys to be successful and what's probably going to let you guys grow fast in the future. It's like, yeah, if you had gotten that money in 2021, you wouldn't be as good of a business.
You'd be out of business.
You might be out of business now. Like you'd be like doing, you know what I mean? And the flip side is like now, like you guys are really compelling, and now you guys have like some real stuff, and you guys built the foundation. You built yourselves. More importantly, and so like I don't know, like this is like weird give and take. Where again on the flip side, it's like, oh yeah, like you want to go slow, go alone, go fast, go together. That adage, but like
so I want to add one more thing about how what the building is that at no point did we do it alone. We had advice, we had help, we had support. A lot of it was luck, like I said. My aunt's best friend told us about the conference that we ultimately get the. It's just luck.
Yeah.
All right. The independent decision was that we were committed to learning something new, and we were committed that like when we try, we are cool with the failure because we tried. Like we're able to sleep at night because we have so much pride in how we're attempting to build a business. That success or failure is like hard, but never alone.
Yeah.
And some of that is just technical of like you try to build some of these products out here by yourself, you will literally work on it for years.
Yeah.
That's just what the man hours demand. But anyway, the decision to start is probably pretty independent and case by case, but asking for help, people are down to talk for free, and the internet exists.
Real, ask for help. Call up me or Miles. Last closing out question, like anything you want to say to the audience, anything you're gonna need over the next couple months, like any whether that's future talent, investment interest, partnership, like anything. Any ask.
Quick list. I follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Instagram. Generally at
relay.us.
relai.us. At _relay on most socials. If you want to build a custom relay app, if you want to host an exchange zone, we can literally get you squared away in a few weeks. No cost to start. Right? Like I said, our commitment is like we did the hard work. You guys just have to want to use it. That's it. Tons of barriers to start, but I think the real ending note is I'm just grateful. I actually don't think I'm a serial entrepreneur at all.
This is it.
Yeah, I think this is it.
I mean, technically you are, because this is like your third thing.
Dog,
yeah. Actually fourth if you count your dev shop.
I think it's lucky, man. I think it's really lucky. Lots of people don't get the opportunity to try.
Yeah.
Whether that's personal, whether that's health, whether that's situational. I'm lucky that I got a co-founder who was willing to try at the same scale and intensity that I want to. I'm lucky that I had enough stability in my home and family life that I never had to, detour. The idea of like I was starting a business and then grandma got sick, right? I was starting a business and then my brother lost his home, right?
Whatever.
So yeah, I'm just I'm grateful for the opportunity to try at this capacity. And shout out TJ.
Shout out TJ. He's the GOAT.
He really is the GOAT.
Yeah, and I guess that's all. I'm really excited to see where Miles and Relay go. I know he's on my list of people to watch out for, so he should be on your list too. Yeah, shout out. next on the mic. I still gotta figure out this outro.